format change, alright? Gotta keep things new in this world, you feel me? Yeah, we're all I Am Sam up in this motherfucker. Detective Pikachu is the first feature-length attempt to realize the world of Pokemon video game concept in live action. Long considered a difficult prospect, as Pokemon's chief selling point is the menagerie of colorful anime creatures who generally can't deliver any dialogue apart from their own names. The human characters are blank slates inhabited by player personalities, and the main gameplay is themed around a competitive fighting sport league participated in by the aforementioned creatures with a complex set of rules that dominates much of the culture of its fictional world. So kind of a lot to lift for anyone who hasn't been marinating in the Poke culture since the 90s Game Boy era. Detective Pikachu's novel solution to this is to kick off what the producers are clearly hoping is an entire live-action Pokemon universe with an adaptation of a spin-off game that featured a more defined protagonist, an atypical version of the most popular variety of Pokemon who could speak full sentences, in this case in the voice of Ryan Reynolds, and takes place primarily in a city where the video game-ish part of the Pokemon experience is more backgrounded and thus more closely resembles something like reality but with Pokemon in it, and can thus deliver an engaging story within the anime/game continuity with plenty of opportunities to visualize Pokemon themselves while also serving as an ideal entry point for general audiences. Assuming said general audiences can hear any of the plot, dialogue, or even ambient noise over the thunderous sound of excited younger fans pointing and shouting the names of their just appeared on screen favorite Pokemon every 30 to 40 seconds of the movie. Indeed, Detective Pikachu may or may not be the best video game movie ever made. It's probably the best based on a currently popular contemporary title, and certainly the best one that doesn't star Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And in fact, outside that self-evidently low bar, it suffers from many of the same issues as other modern franchise blockbusters, i.e. a second act overly dominated by a perfunctory MacGuffin hunt after a promising first half, a finale that's visually exciting but somewhat detached and feels mostly pre-visualized with character likability and long-term brand building clearly being favored to do most of the legwork. But as a family action comedy, it's more than solid, and as a Pokemon fan service generator, it's something like a goddamn supernova. Best described in both stylistic and thematic terms as a neon-infused crossbreed of Blade Runner, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Zootopia by way of the Muppets meets Hideaki Anno. The story follows young Justice Smith as a jaded, one-time would-be Pokemon trainer named Tim traveling to Rhyme City, a London-esque megalopolis where Pokemon battles and capture are off-limits and the creatures walk the streets with essentially the same freedom of movement as human beings, or at least well-thought-of animal companions, to settle the affairs of his estranged father, a police detective who's died under a suspicious circumstance. After a chance encounter with his dad's Pokemon partner, a Pikachu, Tim discovers that for some unknown reason, he, but only he, can understand what Pikachu is saying as English rather than typical Pokemon speak. Given this, and the fact that Detective Pikachu has been struck with amnesia, the two decide to reluctantly work together to retrace the steps of the deceased, or is he father's last case, to find answers to their mutual questions, gradually uncovering a conspiracy involving underground Pokemon fight leagues, dangerous street drugs that turn tame Pokemon feral, a mysterious research facility conducting illegal experiments, and the involvement of a character from the games whose presence has been shown in some trailers but whose appearance on screen still drew audible gasps at my screening. As may have been perhaps expected, the film has been at its best when it's finding reasons for Detective Pikachu himself and the various other Pokemon to simply exist in the frame, interacting with the real world and each other, and less so when it's going through the motions of a serviceable but not precisely riveting neo-noir mystery story, your level of engagement with which will roughly equate to how deeply invested you are with the nuances of Pokemon universe world building and how few other science fiction mystery detective stories you've seen before this. The CGI animation for the Pokemon themselves, while not uniformly perfect, especially considering most of these things were never meant to be seen in photorealistic 3D in the first place, all looks great in motion, especially Pikachu himself, who's constantly compelling and so instantly expressive yet real feeling in the scene. It's often jarring to remember that you're not looking at either a puppet or some kind of actual animal most of the time. Ryan Reynolds' voice, while distinctly always his inflection, is very much a wholly different performance from his laconic live-action turns or his similarly largely faceless role as Deadpool, here inhabiting a vulnerable, often extremely sad character who functions like a defensively sarcastic Jiminy Cricket and has a winning chemistry with Smith, who also has cute scenes opposite Catherine Newton as a reporter and sometime love interest, whose story also goes to a more dark place than you might expect. And while not overly original getting there, although in fairness a certain amount of feels like a real detective story, but with Pokemon in it seems to have been part of the intention, the eventual playing out of the big bad guy plan, the mechanics thereof, and how it's realized is pretty bonkers and makes for some memorably wacky visuals involving the various creatures, including the revelation that at least one really unlikely Pokemon turns out to be straight up nightmare fuel when its abilities are realized in live action, and a big set-piece fight between Pikachu and a big bad that should send fans up the wall. And prior to that, we get a really cool, nearly abstract scene showing off how strange the wild territory of these animals can actually be, and at least one battle scene that more than suggests a traditional Pokemon movie is more than feasible and will be more in demand than ever. I don't know that Detective Pikachu is the best video game movie ever. It's certainly not a perfect film, but it's a lot of fun and it's an excellent Pokemon movie. So gonna give this one 7 out of 10. Definitely check it out.